Welcome back to the PPR Stock Report. It is Friday, September 16th, and you are with Joe Marshall and Trent Seibel. That is PPR Jesus and PPR Stat Grinder. Week 1 is already in the books, and the first game of Week 2 happened last night. We're going to talk about that. But first, I'm actually going to open it up a little different than normal. We are eating some Quick Trip pizza and some Best Damn Root Beer. We're not sponsored by any of these guys, but I think we're alcoholics. We always seem to be drinking when we pod.
I will not attempt to do this without drinking.
Didn't you have a streak of like 2 weeks that you were like on the wagon or off the wagon, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, and I also had the shakes those 2 weeks.
I know, you couldn't hardly do anything.
Those were our 2 least listenable podcasts also.
So Best Damn Root Beer, drinking today. It's not too bad. What do you think?
It's pretty good. I like it. It's a little bit of like a niche beer. Grab a 6-pack of it. I wouldn't want to drink it by the case or anything, or, it's not like a, throw down some beers and barbecue type of beer, but it's
got that strong alcoholic aftertaste, that's for sure. But I think that the winner for today is that Quick Trip pizza. It's weird to get pizza from a gas station, but it's delicious.
Nothing but the finest for the PPR Stock Report.
I know.
Gas station oven pizza and
gas station beer.
Root beer.
So last night, we came into this Jets-Bills game, and we thought it was going to be an ugly game, which it was an ugly game. But at least it was a high-scoring game for a Thursday night game.
I thought it was going to be the ugly that you're talking about as far as, like, a grind-it-out type of run-the-clock down, multiple turnovers, just kind of ugly. And it ended up being a shootout, 37-31. The Jets came out on top.
Well, it started out super ugly, and if you didn't watch the game and you just get on the news, ESPN and this and that, they're talking about Fitzpatrick like he's the next superstar quarterback, Hall of Famer in the whole world. He basically came out, though, and fumbled the ball 3 times in the first 3 minutes of the game.
Well, it wasn't only that. Early on, we saw the gruesome knee injury that we thought Brandon Marshall went down with. That was pretty early in the game as well.
Yeah, but that's when it kind of turned around. I thought Brandon Marshall was dead. I thought his knee was done.
My phone lit up like a candle. I mean, everybody in our leagues was texting us on Twitter. Twitter was lighting up. I mean, we saw some still frames of Brandon Marshall's knee bent backwards. I did mention to you, seeing the injury that way, I said that looks more of like a hyperextension than when you see these guys tear their ACLs.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a non-contact. It was a definite contact injury.
Oh, yeah.
It was a dirty play. He got pulled down by his face mask, and his leg twisted the wrong way. And I got to say, Brandon Marshall's probably got to be one of the toughest guys out there, because he was out shortly after that. I was worried his season was over.
The tides did turn there. The Jets really picked up steam after that. And then I think when that happened, he only had 1 catch, and he ended with 6 for 100. So, a very worthwhile night for him.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Decker and Marshall both had similar targets. Marshall had 9 to Decker's 8. They both just crossed over the 100-yard mark. The big difference as far as fantasy points, though, Decker did have a touchdown. It's pretty much death taxes and Decker getting a touchdown. It's looking like.
He is good at football. I never want to give him. My ownership in Eric Decker over the last 4 years sits at a goose egg.
Yeah, he's been you've been pretty down on him, but
and he's always a great value. Also,
I saw a stat yesterday. He's at 18 games now without being either under 80 yards or being held out a touchdown. So
that's just fantasy gold. I mean, that's insane.
I mean, so he's getting at least, in a PPR, he's getting at least 7 points.
Is this like reverse racism? Is it because he's a white boy? I don't know.
He's getting, they don't play him as hard.
Danny Woodhead was the number 3 scoring PPR running back last year.
Maybe it's because these defenders just are like, that white boy ain't doing nothing.
Oh my goodness.
We don't got to play him as hard.
Did you just say we don't got to? Is that black voice?
I don't know what that is. So, what about Forte, man?
Oh my gosh, he looked spry, didn't he?
Nobody hard. I I mean, I guess people probably played him, but we were actually talking beforehand, and it's funny because I talked to my buddy J-Rod. He was doing his little lineups for FanDuel, and he was asking, it was the same price for Forte or McCoy, and it was unanimous. Pretty much everybody saying, hey, McCoy is the play here.
I said McCoy.
And, I mean, even in my brain, you still got to think that McCoy is the better play, but in retrospect, he was not.
Now, I'm on record early in the preseason where I was not buying any of this Bilal Powell, Matt Forte timeshare. I always say the same thing. That's always a nice idea until the game starts. And when you get a premier player like that in Forte, I mean, it's just hard for him to take snaps off in any time in the game. He did have 30 carries. I think he has 52 carries over 2 weeks. So, I mean, they are going to have to start managing his usage. I don't think you have any Forte ownership, do you?
I do not.
Now, if you did, would you be selling him high right now? Would that be the goal?
That I would for sure be talking to everybody in my league right now to see who wants Forte at a sell high price after that 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, you'll have to wait till after the weekend, of course, and then try to shop him then.
Yeah, I'd be kind of putting the feelers out. This is going to be the week. 3 touchdowns. I don't care who you are. That's not sustainable by anybody, and that's where most of his value came from. So it's not. I don't see Forte doing that the same way that maybe I see C.J. Anderson continuing what you saw last week. I just don't know that the Jets are going to be down there to give him 3 touchdowns every week. And on top of it, you still do have Brandon Marshall, thank the Lord, and Eric Decker over there. So... And you've got this, Quincy Enunwa?
Yeah, if you're in deeper leagues, I mean, if you're in dynasty leagues, you're well aware of who he is. Yeah. He looks like a legit talent. He's a guy that interests me a lot if Marshall were to go down or Decker miss some time.
And even still, he's got standalone flex value. I mean, last night he was 6 for 92.
And he had a similar performance in week 1 as well.
So, I mean, it wasn't a one-hit wonder. He does look good. He looks legit. So it looks like Fitzpatrick has weapons out there, which is bad if you have Forte as far as his touchdowns moving forward.
Fitzpatrick 375 yards and a touchdown.
Gosh, and they were talking about him like I said, like he's the best quarterback in the league right now. They just forgot about how that game started. But he did end strong. You got to give him that. I like to see that. I've got Marshall ownership in a couple of leagues. So
now, Tyrod on the Bills side of things, Tyrod, he was worthwhile if you started him. 3 touchdowns, just shy of 300 yards.
I'm thinking a lot of people didn't start him. No. I've got him in one league, and I sat him. I needed to see more from him than the 5 points I got from him last week. He put up 33 points this week.
Marquise Goodwin got behind Darrell Revis, early and torched him for a touchdown. A couple long plays. Other than that, he didn't play all that well. I mean, you can't take the long plays out of the game, of course, so he did hit on them. He was still wildly inaccurate. He's a guy that I just don't love moving forward, but apparently all the rest of the fantasy community does.
They love him.
So LaShawn McCoy, again, PPR, still a pretty decent night. Nothing spectacular. 59 yards rushing. He chipped in for 4 receptions and 31 yards.
And the goose egg on the touchdown.
Yeah,
that's
no
what really got him.
And then, Sammy Watkins, you kind of mentioned on Twitter, I saw that you thought he'd be out there, and he was. And you used the word decoy. I don't know if that's exactly what he was. We watched the game. I mean, I think they tried to get him the ball a few times. He did have 5 targets. He was just off. But, I mean, there has to be growing concern that if he's this injured, what is he doing out there if he's not going to make a mark in the game?
You keep seeing this in the NFL. That's why I used the word decoy. Maybe it wasn't specifically a decoy situation. But, hey, he's out there being ineffective for no other reason, and it's the NFL defenses they're not junior high school JV defenses. They know he's ineffective after 1 or 2 plays of seeing him hobbling and limping down the field.
So, you may not have even seen this because it just happened. So I don't know. I know you were a little busy before we started recording, but so the Bills let up 37 points and they fire their offensive coordinator. They scored 31 points.
I did see that come across.
They fired their offensive coordinator. So Rex isn't going to fire his brother, the defensive coordinator, Rob Ryan, but he will fire the offensive coordinator. So, I mean, that puts a little wrinkle in things, I would imagine. They kind of run like a pretty vanilla offense as is, and I think with Rex Ryan, similar like almost to Jeff Fisher, the offense is going to be basically the same regardless of who's the OC. But just, keep your eye on that. It might take those guys a few weeks. Or, hey, who knows? Maybe they respond to it in a positive way.
Well, so at the end of the day, for a Thursday night game, I thought it was a pretty good game. I had a decent time watching it, surprisingly, for it being the Jets and the Bills. Apparently nobody else was having a good time watching it, though, because we were out and about actually watching the game, and then halfway through the game, the waitress comes over and tries to change the channel on us.
Oh, yeah. She tried to put the baseball St. Louis Cardinals on.
Get out of here.
I said, no. I mean, the Cardinals are in a playoff hunt. We're in St. Louis. I love my Cardinals, but any football game, even if it's Jets-Bills on Thursday, supersedes anything baseball for me.
Yeah. Plus, using the word playoff hunt to the way they've been playing. Yeah. I don't know if that's accurate. So, lots of injuries to talk about.
You talk about them a little bit while I eat this pizza, okay?
So jealous right now. The big one, Keenan Allen. If you are in fantasy football whatsoever, you're well aware of the Keenan Allen injury. He's out for the year, torn ACL, which is a really big bummer because by the time that he actually went out, he was looking real good into the first quarter, 6 for 63, looking like the PPR target monster that we expected. And then he goes down with this knee injury. And it was bad.
If you followed the Chargers last year, Phillip Rivers' production went down big time after Keenan Allen went down, obviously, for obvious reasons. But on the flip side, Danny Woodhead's value really climbed after that point. So, and I think we saw a lot of the same thing in a microcosm in that 3 quarters after Keenan Allen went down. I mean, they relied heavily again on Danny Woodhead.
So how do you replace him? If you are a Keenan Allen owner, you lost him for the year, how do you replace him? I mean, there's nobody out there that's going to basically take his points.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough sledding if you think you're going to, match his points for the season on the waiver wire. But hopefully you have a guy on your bench, someone like Deshaun. If not, I'd try to target a player like that. I think Deshaun at the end of the year in a contract year maybe puts up wide receiver 2 type of numbers at a wide receiver 3 or flex price. Travis Benjamin is more or less,
he's like the natural fix for this.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, and it's kind of weird as far as the handcuffing a wide receiver. You usually handcuff your running backs, but I actually did handcuff Keenan Allen. I've got him in 2 leagues, and I took Travis Benjamin as a handcuff in both leagues, specifically due to Keenan Allen's injury history, and hopefully that's going to pay off.
Well done.
Well, and we kind of talked about it as well. There's other scenarios, or as you always say, scenarios if you're a cunt.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've done the same thing with Julio Jones and Mohamed Sanu.
And that's a good one.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing it hopefully down in Houston with the emergence of Will Fuller. If you have DeAndre, I'd love to have Will Fuller on my bench as well.
Or if you have Golden Tate and you handcuff him with Marvin Jones, or if you have Marvin Jones, you handcuff him with Golden Tate.
No, that's not the same thing. No, and you know what? It's not the same thing. And the reason it's not, because those are both kind of starting week-to-week quality guys.
You kind of got to pay for them, too.
Yeah, so a little different.
So, Jonathan Stewart, he's out with an ankle injury. He is expected to play. So, I mean, that's not super huge news. Just know this. If you got Jonathan Stewart, he should be playing. Still doesn't mean he's going to get a lot of points. T.Y. missed practice with a little bit of a knee injury yesterday, but he was back to practicing. Actually, I think he missed Wednesday. He was back to practice yesterday. He's practicing again today.
Kind of the same thing goes hand in hand with Luck. Luck is still kind of dealing with that sore shoulder.
Yeah, but we saw, going into last week that he was dealing with it, and it didn't slow him down. You got to imagine Luck's fine moving forward.
But let me ask you, do you steer clear of Luck? With the points you are able to find from quarterbacks, if, give me a guy maybe you might throw in over Luck this week. The reason I ask is because Luck plays on the road. He plays at Denver.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a real tough one. As far as quarterbacks, I can't say that I'd play him over Luck. I think Luck's still going to get points. I think you'll get 20 out of Luck, the same that you got out of Cam Newton against Denver.
Okay.
At the end of the day. But if you do have somebody that you want to throw in there that you normally wouldn't, I would say maybe Dak Prescott. And I believe I've got him on the start sit a little bit later on. So
a little precursor to start sit. I like that. Dangling the carrot.
Yeah. You got to wait another 40 minutes to catch the rest of it. What do we got? T.Y. Now Demarius. this makes me sad.
Yeah, the Demaryius, his hip is the issue, and the coaching staff seems to say he's going to be fine, but anytime a microphone gets in front of Demaryius' mouth, he's saying he's not fine. He's closer to week to week.
Yeah.
This is going to be something, it's just a few years ago, Jordy Nelson kind of dealt with that deal throughout the year and then had surgery at the end of the year, so who knows? This is a tough one.
Well, I mean, everybody that listens to this podcast knows I like Demaryius Thomas, but he was not very effective after that hip injury. We saw him getting stretched out last week, and then from there on, he just wasn't as effective. I mean, it's not like he's not worth having him on your roster, but moving forward, you got to hope that they let him heal. If that means he needs to sit out a week or two, he needs to sit out a week or two. What you don't want is this hip to get worse, and then he's out for the whole season.
Another one of the biggest hitters in fantasy football. What about Gronk? What have you heard on Gronk, Trent?
So I read that Gronk is practicing, but I'm also reading that Gronk is not likely to play.
Really?
So, that being said, if Gronk is practicing, I cannot imagine in any situation that Gronk is not playing.
Okay. That's the Patriots' way.
Yeah. Patriots, you can't listen to anything that they say. If he's practicing, I've at least got him in my lineup. I'm listening to Twitter the morning of, just basically for that last-minute call. But you got to feel good that he is back to practice. So we'll see what comes of that. Another big hitter that's becoming maybe a little bit less of a big hitter is Jamal Charles.
Jamal, I know.
J. Charles. He's still limited in practice. They say there's a chance that he could play this week. They've got Houston this week, so I mean, even if he does play, he's probably not playing a full load against a good defense.
Well, they squeaked out that win against San Diego in overtime, so I guess the rush, I would imagine, in my mind, would be less to get him back.
Yeah, and I think the bigger side of that also is that Spencer Ware went for 199 all-purpose yards.
He looked really good.
He looked really good. And Sharkandrick didn't look as good, but he still looks just perfect for what they have him for.
Now, I mean, still monitor that situation, Trent, because oddly enough, they played the same exact amount of snaps.
Yeah, I mean, Spencer Ware did more with his snaps than Sharkandrick did.
Sure.
But, like I said, at the end of the day, there's nothing that keeps them from making Spencer Ware their guy, with Sharkandrick basically being the breather, change of pace guy.
Sure, and I'm sure there's people listening and, saying, oh my God, there's no way. Jamal Charles is a superstar. But keep in mind, just the Chiefs' history. I know it's different management, but, they went from Priest Holmes and he slowed down. And then there was a little overlap with Larry Johnson and he just took his job out of nowhere. Same thing happened with Larry Johnson. That's how Jamal Charles got the spot that he's in now. So, I mean, it's not unprecedented by any means.
And Jamal knows it.
Oh yeah, so, he did it to a guy.
he's nervous. It's kind of like the cheating thing. The girl that slides in, the home wrecker or whatever, and then she's all upset later on when the guy cheats on her.
Yeah, it's like, shouldn't you know that he's a cheater?
Come on. So, yeah, as far as the Jamal situation, I think the worst thing that you just gotta hope doesn't happen is if you got Spencer Ware and you got Jamal Charles, because you should have them both if you've got Jamal Charles.
Yeah, let's sure hope you do.
But, even if you got one of them, you really don't want this to turn into a timeshare. That's the worst case scenario from a fantasy perspective. They come back and they say, hey, Jamal's still a superstar, but Spencer Ware is really good. You got a 50-50 timeshare. Sharkandrick's out there doing nothing. That's not good for anybody in the fantasy world. Devonta Freeman, highly ineffective during week one.
Yeah. That's my Devonta Freeman noise right now.
Terrible. Tevin Coleman looked way better. They had similar carries, but Tevin Coleman just outperformed him top to bottom. And then on top of it, you find out Devonta Freeman coming into the week has a quad injury. He's not practicing. But now he is practicing, so I really just have to hope that quad injury was kind of the thing that held him back last week, and basically kept him from being the Devonta Freeman that we did see last year.
Yeah, it was. Week one was the same exact thing that happened in the third preseason game.
And you were saying that right after the preseason game that you were worried.
I was a little worried just because they had even snap shares, and again, Tevin Coleman outworked him big time.
Yeah, so, I mean, you come this week, you see that injury, it just scares you because we were saying Tevin Coleman's not going to really crack into his workload too much. But now it's looking like that's a really, really good possibility, especially if he can't stay healthy.
He's reminding all of us that he actually won the job last year out of camp. Tevin Coleman was supposed to start the season.
Yeah, so, I mean, at this point, I think we saw Tevin Coleman is actually still not owned in a lot of leagues, which is crazy. But if Tevin Coleman is in your league, he's got to be a guy that is getting picked up like yesterday.
Dude, I'm terribly sorry. My head is flaking on the notes here.
Joe looks like PPR Jesus looks like PPR leper right now. We talked about it. He went to the actual Kansas City San Diego game last week.
Kansas City, yeah.
He didn't wear sunblock. He's out there with his bald dome. Gosh, we got to take a picture of this and put it up on Twitter.
Okay, I will. It's painful.
Walking down the street, people avoid him like they think he has a sickness.
I look like Freddy Krueger.
That's pretty funny. But, so, news for Chris Ivory. There's not a lot of news about him, but he's out of the hospital.
I wrote the notes here, and I just have 37 question marks behind Chris Ivory's name.
And that's 100% true. Nobody even knows what's going on. I read that he had some type of calf injury, and he was in the hospital, which just doesn't add up to me. You know, from the medical side of the house, I would think maybe he has compartment syndrome, which, in a nutshell, just means that the muscle's swelling up to the point where it's cutting off blood flow, and they have to literally do surgery to cut the back of your leg open.
But why the secrecy around something like that?
Because it's the NFL, man. They don't even do probable anymore.
Can you get compartment syndrome from banging hookers and doing blow?
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, that would be the only reason to keep it that big of a secret, right?
I guess you could if you got a little too crazy and banged your leg on something and it started swelling up. But so you're calling it right now. Chris Ivory was in the hospital, not for an actual calf injury.
I would say it was a brothel injury.
A brothel injury.
Yes.
So Chris Ivory, broken penis. Is that what you're going with?
You know, Chris Ivory, I just don't want to talk about him at all. He's one of my nemesises.
You hate him.
Wait, nemesises? Nemesi?
He is your nemesis.
He is my nemesis.
Hey, Chris.
Please edit this.
It's not being edited. All right, Chris Ivory out of the hospital. Let's just say, though, he's still probably doubtful for Sunday. I'm not looking too forward to seeing him out there, which does bode well if you're a Yeldon owner.
Yeah, I have Yeldon in one league. I actually picked him up off the waiver wire
you
before
played him
week
over
one.
Danny Woodhead last
I
week.
did, yeah, and unfortunately that didn't work out.
It wasn't too bad, though.
No, I lost out on about 6 points on that. Not a great play, but he didn't look terribly good. But that Jacksonville offensive line didn't look good. I don't want to bury Yeldon. I mean, he doesn't look like he's the strongest inside runner, but he can make people pay in the passing game a little bit.
So we got 2 more injuries that are going to probably affect a decent amount of our fantasy listeners. Zach Ertz, a rib dislocation.
Does Zach's ball sack hurt?
His rib hurts.
Oh, okay.
Right now. Is
he going to miss time with this?
You know, a rib injury, I have to imagine that if he doesn't miss time, he's probably not going to be that effective. It is hard to breathe when you have those rib injuries.
Well, tight ends, they're doing a lot of their work over the middle, a lot of grunt work.
So, yeah, you got that rib dislocation. And not only that, but it's pretty dangerous, too. If you've got some type of rib injury that's not... I mean, your ribs are secured in there, but if you get hit real hard, those ribs, you know, when they come loose or they move around or they break even more... They become jagged splinters, and you've got a lot of real important stuff in there. That's why you have ribs in the first place. So I can imagine that he's probably not going to play with these rib injuries. And if he does, I don't know that he's going to play effectively. Russell Wilson, also a little banged up. You saw him gimpy halfway through the game.
Ndamukong Suh stepped on his ankle, jerk.
That's what he does. That's a Ndamukong Suh move.
Yeah, he's kind of a punk.
How many ankles has he stomped on since he came in the league? I mean, there's been at least 2 or 3 other.
Yeah, he's had multiple fines
because
because of things like this too. Yeah.
So
I don't know if this one was on purpose, but the fact that it was him makes me angry.
Yeah. Well, so moving forward though, Russell Wilson, how does this affect his productivity? I mean,
of course you want to see him, score some points with his legs. Around 600 yards, 700 yards rushing or so.
But outside of that, he also avoids a lot of sacks. He makes good plays downfield because of his mobility.
Absolutely. I mean, he was still able to construct a drive at the end of the game to to beat the Dolphins. Hit my boy Des Bryant Baldwin.
Des Baldwin?
Des Baldwin.
That's what you're calling him from now on?
Yeah, he hit him in the end zone. Baldwin looked good again. I think people that paid that 5th or 6th round price for Baldwin are going to be very happy.
Yeah, so I think that's gonna wrap it up for the injuries. We're gonna take a break here in a minute, but before we do, I'm throwing Joe on the hot seat.
Oh,
after week 1, I'm gonna throw 2 names out to you. Tell me which one you like better.
I'm so nervous. I'm unprepared for this.
Yep. So let's just basically the format of this is the.
So who do I want for week 2, or who do I want like moving for the rest of the year?
Let's say this is a trade, and you got to pick which side you like.
Oh, okay.
All right, hot seat. C.J. Anderson, Adrian Peterson.
C.J. Anderson.
Crazy. But I would say right now, I would not trade C.J. Anderson.
This is my hot seat, not your hot seat.
All right, I'm staying off the hot seat.
Right. No, so you would keep Peterson?
No, I would not trade C.J. Anderson if somebody offered me Peterson.
Okay, so you're on the same side as me. Okay.
Devonta Freeman or Tevin Coleman?
Jesus. I'm going to roll with Devonta. I'm going to sync with Devonta Freeman.
All right, there you go.
What about you? You're allowed to answer. I'm teasing.
Back on the hot seat. You know, I still would not give up Devonta Freeman for Tevin Coleman right now. I'm praying that Devonta Freeman picks it up, gets back to, for what you paid for him, but...
Because we're stubborn and dumb.
It could be a mistake. Willie Snead or Doug Baldwin?
Doug Baldwin. Oh, dang. Long Doug Baldwin.
Des Baldwin.
I don't think Snead can sustain what he's doing right now. He looked really good in preseason. He had a very, very productive rookie year, over 900 yards. I just, you see something like that, 170 yards in that first week. So, no, give me Des Baldwin.
All right. Jameis Winston or Russell Wilson moving forward?
You know what? I'm going to say Russell Wilson.
Oh, man.
But
I think Jameis Winston outscores him.
Okay, that could be close. Jameis Winston looks like he could be legit.
Last one. Danny Woodhead or Melvin Gordon?
Danny Woodhead.
Man, that's one that I think a lot of people are going to mess up on. I think a lot of people are going to hold on to Melvin Gordon. And if Danny Woodhead doesn't get hurt, I think Danny Woodhead outscores Melvin Gordon.
I don't know what people you're talking about. I don't see anybody taking Melvin Gordon over Danny Woodhead in PPR leagues.
All right, so that's going to wrap up the hot seat. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we get back, we're going to talk about our ramen rosters from last week. We're going to go ahead and give you our ramen rosters this week.
Can we just skip last week?
No, sir.
Damn it.
No, sir. So we're going to be eating on a budget, and then we're going to give you guys some start sits for the upcoming Sunday of football.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, we'll talk to you guys in a few.
Every time you put me on hold, there is obscene music playing.
And we're back.
Wow. Do you practice that in the mirror? That was really good.
I do it all the time, every single morning. That's how I wake everybody up in my house.
And we're awake.
That's what I do.
It's 5 a.m., dickhead.
Hey, nobody in this house besides you and me get up at 5 a.m., so we got to make it happen. We just talked about all the injury stuff. Joe was in the hot seat. Now we're going to talk about how you guys are going to eat on a budget. So we talk about this every week. We will talk about this every week. Moving forward, it's our ramen roster. We basically take people that are owned in 60% or less of Yahoo leagues, and we make a full roster of who we think are going to do well that week. Last week, it was actually a lot closer than we thought it was going to be when we actually looked at the first picks, the quarterbacks. I came out on top, 115 and 106.
Oh, so I have to buy you breakfast.
You got to buy me breakfast.
Son of a bitch.
The funny thing, though, is that my ramen team only got beat by my real APQ team.
By 1 point.
By 1 point.
But our ramen roster does not carry a kicker.
Because that's stupid.
So really, your ramen roster outperformed your home league roster.
I do that all the time. I do pretty good at these ramen picks. When it comes to, hey, this week, if I can give one piece of fantasy advice, just hold on and don't freak out.
Where did you beat me? I remember you had Alex Smith.
Yeah,
he had a big week.
Alex Smith got 32, and I also had Sanu who put up 21. You probably had the best pick, though. It was less points, but it was Theo Riddick.
That's a good one.
You got 27 out of him, and I got to say 27 out of a running back is more valuable than 32 out of a quarterback any day of the week.
Hey, thanks for the silver lining for my loss. I really appreciate that.
Boom. This is a on-air fist bump.
I like it.
You also had Tajay. A lot of people are high on him. He put up 14 in the PPR.
I think Tajay is gonna see a little action on my ramen roster this week, baby.
I think Tajay is going to be on a lot of ramen rosters this week. So let's go ahead and get into it. We'll do it position by position. We'll start with quarterback. Who you got this week?
I have Joey Flacco.
Broke ass sneak Flacco.
Against the junior varsity Cleveland Browns.
Hey, it was pretty good. I mean, it was nice to see Flacco moving around, doing all right last week. I was real worried about him. Cleveland is terrible. You can't hate that pick at all.
I like that he hit Mike Wallace deep a few times.
For the deep one. And I will be talking about Mike Wallace later on in my ramen roster. I've got Dak versus Washington. I don't think Dak looked super good. I think he looked like a quarterback playing in his first game in the NFL. But I think he looked like the better side of that spectrum. I think he's got Washington this week. I think they really need that win. Dak needs that bounce back, and I think he's going to see a lot more productivity this week than we got out of him last week.
Now, Ben Roethlisberger carved Washington up last week. I'm a little concerned because Josh Norman's going to be out there. He's going to be on the left defensive side, and regardless of what they do with Dez, move him away from him, have him go against Josh Norman, it's going to kind of cut the field in half. So I'm worried that this is going to be a poor performance for Dak.
Well, maybe that'll be good for Dak to only have to look at half of the field. So
less options.
Yeah. Hey, the other thing about that is he's got another week to work with Dez. I think that one of the biggest things missing from that game last week was that Dak-Dez connection. They just seemed like they were a little off. Maybe they fixed it. That's the hope. If so, I think Dak does well.
Now, let's tell the listeners, we do these rosters. We whip these up independently.
100% separately. So I don't know what he picks, and he doesn't know what I pick until they've already been picked. So the reason we say that is our next few picks are pretty similar, which should actually be an indicator that they're probably pretty good picks.
How are these guys still available in 40% of leagues? What the hell is going on in these leagues?
Yeah, we've got Tevin Coleman and Theo Riddick, both available in 60% or less of leagues. Joe's going crazy with these beer bottle caps.
I know it's loud on the pod. I'm annoying.
Every time you hear one hit, he's opening a new beer. I think he's on 4.
Sorry.
If I had 4 beers, I'd be on the floor.
My belly hurts. This is too much best damn root beer.
It's good stuff. So Tevin Coleman, he's got Oakland this week. You've got at least somewhat crippled Devonta Freeman. And after the workload he had last week, I wouldn't even say workload, but the productivity he had last week, you got to expect big things. The only thing that's scary is Oakland pretty much shut down the run game last week. We'll see what happens this week. Theo Riddick, a PPR machine. He's been like this for years now, and nobody buys into the Theo Riddick hype.
Last year was his real big breakout, and then week 1, obviously, he had 2 touchdowns. He's an intricate part of that offense. I mean, they're gonna split between him and Abdullah 50-50 basically, and it seems like Riddick is the better pass catcher.
And we talk about it too. They only kept 4 wide receivers, so he's catching passes.
Yeah, and although Ebron did look pretty decent, and he's still a little bit banged up, so they're going to be throwing the ball to running backs a lot.
So we both had Coleman, we both had Riddick. On the wide receiver side of things, we both had Terrell Williams versus Jacksonville. We know that Keenan Allen, he's gone from that San Diego offense. They've got to have somebody step up. The basic idea right now is you got Travis Benjamin basically playing short game. Terrell Williams, he's not a guy that's going to catch a whole bunch of passes.
I like your next guy here. Who do you have there at wide receiver number 2?
Sanu. I've got Sanu.
He has a bulky knee. Is he good?
He was a little crippled up. They say he's going to be playing. They say he's at least close to full speed. If he looks anything like what he looked like last week, you got to expect big things out of Sanu.
My number 2 receiver there is rookie wonder Tajay Sharp.
Gosh.
I like him a lot.
And he came out of nowhere, too. So he's got Detroit this week. Should be a pretty good matchup.
He's the number 1 there. I mean, I don't even think it's close.
Yeah. I've got Mike Wallace as my 3rd wide receiver. We talked about Flacco earlier versus Cleveland. Now we've got Wallace. I think the same thing. He's not going to catch a lot of passes. He's going to be similar to Terrell Williams, but I bet you he catches one or two long ones, hopefully for a touchdown.
I'm going with Brandon LaFell to round out my receivers. He had 8 targets last week. They're playing against Pittsburgh, and I could see Pittsburgh. I think they're going to be involved in a lot of shootouts. So I could see Cincinnati maybe trailing, needing some points late, and LaFell taking out the garbage for me, baby.
I hope so, because LaFell also had the most drops in the NFL last year. So, I mean...
Oh, do I lose points if he has a drop, bud, or what?
As opposed to a catch, yes.
Oh.
Technicalities. All right, tight ends. Virgil Green.
Yeah, boy.
I love Virgil Green this year. He looked real good early on. He didn't look so good last week.
Oh, look at this new software. Look how loud my voice is. Oh, wow.
I know, we got a visual interpretation of this. We actually got a whole new setup. We bought a brand new mic, trying to get the quality a little bit better so we're not blasting out your ears. But we've got a computer over here that's monitoring our voices and our levels. And Joe is just so much louder than me. He's even closer to I'm closer to the mic. He's farther away. He's still louder. But yeah, my favorite part about the software, I just randomly press buttons like I'm doing something fancy. But
yeah.
I'm not.
No, that's just the escape button.
Yeah. It's a good thing the escape button ain't shutting us down. So, yeah, Virgil Green versus Indy. He's got an easier matchup this week. He had
that
Carolina
Indy defense is
last
soft.
week. Yeah, so I imagine that he'll do better than he did last week.
And if he's working over the middle, just kind of to note, DeQuell Jackson kind of looked slow last week. He's going to be the middle linebacker for the Colts, and that might be a matchup that Virgil Green can exploit potentially.
Look, I don't think Seaman's going to be all over the place this week. So I think he's going to be checking down Virgil Green. And
I'm cutting you off. I'm going Kyle Rudolph at tight end, okay? You went too lowbrow for the pod there.
I was about to...
Seaman all over the place.
I was about to hit your boy CJ, though. He's going to be catching a lot of that, too.
Well,
so.
we CJ Anderson and I appreciate it, but not your lowbrow Seaman joke.
All right, so my flex is going to be Tajay. We already talked about him.
Yeah, I see that.
Your flex, it kind of surprised me a little bit, but it's probably not a bad pick.
Justin Forsett against Cleveland. I think Joey Bombs Flacco hits him for a receiving touchdown for Forsett.
You know what? Out of that crazy messed up mess of a backfield, he's the one that looked the best last week.
Yeah, I think he outsnapped Terrence West 35-30, and then Buck Allen ended up being a scratch. So I think Forsett does have a chance to gain a little bit of steam.
So another little piece of insight about our ramen rosters. They are finalized before the NFL week starts, which happened last night. So I had the Jets versus Buffalo, which already happened.
That looked like a juicy matchup.
It looked really good. It was only worth 2 points.
Good deal.
Luckily for you guys, that's already over. Don't pick the Jets as of yesterday.
I have the Packers against Minnesota. It's going to be Samantha Bradford's first start with them. I think Green Bay is going to really cause a lot of trouble for him. So give me Green Bay. And you know what? Green Bay available in over 40% of leagues. I mean, this is a great streaming option this week in my mind.
They were a good defense last year. Mm-hmm. They put up like 40-some points in one game last year.
And Clay Matthews is funny as hell whenever he gets like a little cameo role. I saw him in Pitch Perfect 2.
Yeah,
he better not have touched my girl, Anna Kendrick.
Yeah, I bet he did.
I'll mess his ass up.
I don't think you will.
You're right.
Man, if there's one guy in the NFL I wouldn't want to get hit by.
Do you think Anna Kendrick listens to the pod?
She should.
I'm going to tweet it to her.
If so.
Let's link it to her. Let's send it over.
Give us hit us up. All right, so we're going to finish up with the start sits for the week. Joe did the start sits last week. I did the start sits this week. And then if he has any input on anybody else that he thinks would be a good start sit, we'll throw that in the mix as well. So, my first start sit should be a no-brainer, but just in case, I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. If you have Eli Manning, you need to start him this week against the Saints.
Game flow is going to dictate a lot of points in that matchup, I would imagine.
He had 6 touchdowns last year in this. I mean, this was a shootout last year. Saints versus the Giants.
Did Breeze have 7?
It was crazy. Yeah, I was playing... I remember last year during this game, I was playing against Eli, and I had Drew Brees on my bench.
Yeah,
because
I remember that.
I played Red Rocket Andy Dalton.
You never listened to me.
No, that's because you were starting Manning.
I was, yes.
You can't tell me about quarterbacks.
Do as I say, not as I do.
So yeah, Eli is going to eat all day on the Saints.
I agree with that.
You got to play him. Obviously, if you got Breeze, but everybody who has a Breeze is starting Breeze. So, Emmanuel Sanders versus Indianapolis.
Okay.
I think this is a good one for a couple of reasons. Emmanuel, he did pretty well
He was
against
the
Carolina.
most targeted receiver in Week 1 for the Broncos.
He was, and I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that Demaryius Thomas was crippled up. But guess what? He's still crippled up. And this is going to be the whole game against a softer defense. I think Emmanuel does well this week. So we could put these together, but I've got Dak versus Washington. We already talked about that, but I also have Jason Witten. I think it's going to be another check down party.
14 targets for Jason Witten last week.
Yeah.
Woo!
If you listen early on, we did the tight end boom bust rankings, and Jason Witten was at the bottom for consistency. But that was with Tony Romo, who, yeah, he's fragile, but he had some field vision. He was able to throw it down. I think Dak, from what I've seen so far, you talked about yourself, he probably doesn't have the most vision. You actually were saying that he had a couple plays where it just didn't look like he even felt the pressure. You didn't know if he just was
It's a
real
fine line.
composed.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if he was cool and calm under pressure or if he just wasn't seeing it coming.
Like the blind guy walking across a battlefield with bullets flying by him and
He
stuff.
looked impressive. I know the stat sheet wasn't filled up all gaudy, but he looked like he can contain himself in the pocket pretty well, and I'm excited for him.
I think both of them do really well this week.
He's a sit for me though. Dak, I'm on the other side of the fence with that one.
We were actually opposite on him last week. I think you had Dak going, and I had him sitting last week.
And he was just average.
Yeah, he wasn't. So he was not good enough in either direction for us to flip flop. But here we are.
There you go.
So Danny Woodhead versus Jacksonville. That also should be a no-brainer.
Well, it's
but
not,
it
though.
wasn't last week, so that's why we're throwing it out.
Yeah,
there.
I mean, Danny Woodhead was drafted as a number 3 or 4 running back on both teams. So you might have a situation where you have Todd Gurley and you have, say, C.J. Anderson, and then on your bench you have Danny Woodhead. What do you do there?
I already told you. I play C.J. Anderson and Danny Woodhead
Would
this
you
week.
actually do that? Do you have the cojones to actually make that move?
It's tough because you know what makes that the toughest, and we're going to talk about it also. So let's go ahead and just slide over to the sit column, and we'll start. I've got Todd Gurley sitting versus Seattle. That offense was highly ineffective against San Francisco. You got to imagine they're going to be even more effective against Seattle, arguably the best defense, them and Denver in the whole league. I just don't see Gurley doing a whole lot, and if you've got Woodhead, I think Woodhead outscores him.
So division game for the Lambs, the Los Angeles Lambs, and
That's what
their
they should be
first
now.
home game there in LA. So you don't think they're extra hyped? You just think they suck.
I don't care how hyped they are. I think that team is doing exactly everything opposite of what they need to be doing as a new team in a big city that's giving them all kinds of money and attention. That team is going down the drain. First thing they need to do is get rid of their coach, and Fisher isn't doing anything. They need to get a new coach, and then we'll talk about Todd Gurley.
It's tough. That's a hot take. Sit Gurley.
Yeah, I would sit if you've got Woodhead and Gurley, and you're going between them. I truly think, especially in PPR, Woodhead outscores him this week. The other guy that I really hate to sit, I traded for him, I got him this week, is Jameis Winston versus Arizona. That's a really tough defense. I think that he's going to have a lot harder time scoring against Arizona, and he actually has a pretty tough road coming up. So he might be a guy that if you have him, it might be too late.
Hang tight.
Well, either hang tight or get rid of him now for whatever you can before he hits that, this tough road ahead. I think he's got 4 games in a row. It's going to be tough. I'm sitting Devonta versus Oakland. It's another big name. You paid a lot of
Second round cost.
second round, sometimes first round, depending on what your situation was in your league or whatnot. Oakland's a tough defense, but, man, Devonta's going to be tough to play until he shows us something, which hopefully he does this week. Here we go. We're going back in time again. This was also done before. The notes were done before yesterday's game, but I had Sammy Watkins as a hard sit.
Bullshit.
Hey.
Yeah, let me see your starts here. Oh, Matt Forte, Eric Decker. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Genius.
Well, I've got the Twitter history.
No, I know. I even predicted,
You were right on the point.
Yeah, I
again,
said
man.
I predicted 2 receptions for 23 yards, and he ended with 2 for 20.
2 for 20. So you've been really good with your predictions so far. You were really on point. I retweeted that from your last week's on the. You've been doing it every Thursday night, so...
I had a rough week at work. This is the positive things I need to hear. Thank you.
I'm here for you.
I appreciate that shit.
All right, so, yeah, Sammy Watkins, we've already talked about him, so there's not a whole lot more to say. But, hey, when you're right, you're right. I'm going to finish with Demaryius Thomas. This, I've already said it. This makes me sad. I like Demaryius Thomas, but going against Indy, who's a super soft defense, with that crippled hip, I just don't even think he needs to be on the field. But if he's on the field, I think it's similar to Sammy Watkins that if you got anybody to replace him.
I'm sitting him. I'm playing Marvin Jones over him in a standard league.
Oh, I would play Marvin Jones over him all day. At this point, until he's back up. And you read the news on him, and he talks about how he can't hardly walk without excruciating pain in that hip. I don't know how they still have him on the field. I think they quote him. They talked about how he's praying every day and this and that. Hey, praying ain't gonna fix that hip.
How about you stretch?
Yeah, you need to stretch. Don't be Keenan Allen.
We didn't mention that on the pod. Let's take it all the way back.
Taking it back.
I went to the Chiefs game, and I was sitting on the sideline near where Keenan Allen was warming up, and I noticed he was very, very easily recognizable. He wears number 13. He was the very furthest player closest to the sideline, and he was wearing some bright yellow shoes. So you can really...
Were they Kanye shoes?
I'm not sure. I know DeAndre wore the Kanye shoes.
Got that fine.
6,000. They should pick that up. Don't you think Kanye should pick, or Adidas or whoever?
Somebody should. And
that's a lot of free pub.
Hey, I'm selling those shoes for $6,000 to get my fine money back.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he could easily get that for him. Hey, sneakerheads will pay a big dollar for that type of stuff. Well, here's where I'm getting with this. Keenan Allen, pregame warm-ups, was not warming up. Well, not at least with the team. The team was doing organized stretching drills.
Like what you're supposed to do to prevent injury.
Yeah, and Keenan Allen's off to the side twerking, and I don't know all the stanky leg. I don't really know, but he was dancing. It looks like he was hyped. He was having a great time. I even thought I got my camera out. I started recording because I'm like, oh, this is hilarious. And until he was dying on the field with a torn ACL.
Like he got shot.
Now, there's no telling if, those two things are related at all, but you have to think you would rather see your star player out there stretching and getting the muscles and tendons and everything ready for this game.
Stretching has been around for a long time for a reason.
Stretching has been around for a long time. That is a very good professional opinion.
I've actually been doing some yoga lately. It's been helping.
It's showing, yeah. You look like you've glossed it. You dropped a couple LBs?
22.
Nice. Good work.
Well,
I'm up 15, so fuck you.
Pretty much when, as soon as Roma went down, I knew that they were going to need something down there, so I'm training.
Oh, okay.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for us. Just make sure that you check us out on the website. That is PPRStockReport.com. Hit us up on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And until next week...
Hey, subscribe to the fucking podcast, guys, okay?